discussions as things unfold. But we are continuing to work as hard as we can to ensure that any COVID-19 relief package crushes the virus, provides direct assistance to the American people, and begins the process of reviving our economy. Given the obstacles that remain in terms of the Senate Republican majority and the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, we understand that any agreement that is ultimately reached will be a necessary down payment and strong first step on what needs to be done in order to aggressively confront the COVID-19 pandemic. And that work will continue during the first 100 days and beyond of the Biden administration. We are continuing to fight to make sure that direct relief to the American people includes assistance with child care, assistance with food insecurity, unemployment insurance assistance, assistance with housing for renters and homeowners who are struggling. And of course, there is a strong desire amongst members of the caucus to ensure that there are direct payments to everyday Americans who have been struggling month after month throughout this pandemic. But we remain cautiously optimistic that substantial progress is underway, and we will not leave the Capitol until an agreement is reached to address the needs of the American people with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me now yield to our Vice Chair, Pete Aguilar.
Thanks, Chairman Jeffries. As the chairman mentioned, we have a duty to provide relief to the American people this week. The arrival of the first doses of the vaccine is absolutely reason for hope, but we're not going to be out of the woods for a while. The months of inaction and refusal by Senate Republicans to act has been beyond unacceptable, and people are truly hurting. We're seeing reports of increased food insecurity, families facing eviction, and workers in need of extended unemployment benefits. I don't know how you could look around this country and not see the need that is out there. The status quo is simply unacceptable. I've been pleased with the bipartisan progress on the proposed relief, as have all of us, and I know our caucus stands ready to deliver results. And the chairman and I, just like he mentioned, share the speaker's commitment to stay here until we get something passed. With the election behind us and the Electoral College officially declaring Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as the winners, I'm hopeful that our Republican colleagues will finally meet us halfway. That's what the American people want. That's what they deserve. And that's what the Democratic Caucus is going to work to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Questions?
Thank you, sir. So you are an impeachment manager, of course, focused on outside issues and influences in our democracy. What is your reaction to Rep. Swalwell possibly being infiltrated by a Chinese spy, and should he be allowed to stay on the Intel Committee?
Well, I believe Speaker Pelosi has addressed this issue. She's got full confidence in Representative Swalwell. I have full confidence in Representative Swalwell. I served with him on the Judiciary Committee as well. He's been a tremendous member.
On the COVID talks and understanding that they are ongoing, there do seem to be some final contours that have been reported out already. One of them is that the state and local is not going to be in there, the liability is not going to be in there, and that the direct payments seem to be on track to be about half of what they were in the CARES Act in March. All that being said, can your caucus support that? That is cutting out the HEROES part of the HEROES Act, and the stimulus checks are going to be half what they were earlier. Is the caucus going to support it?
It's my expectation that any ultimate agreement will have strong support within the House Democratic Caucus, but of course each individual member has to make a determination based on what they view as best for their district and what reflects the aspirations of the people who they serve. in the House of Representatives. Speaker Pelosi, our committee chairs, Chairwoman Lowy, with the full support of the House Democratic Caucus, has done a tremendous job of articulating our values in terms of what's important related to crushing the virus, providing direct assistance to everyday Americans, and ultimately reviving our economy. I articulated 5 different areas that are critically important: child care, housing, food insecurity, unemployment insurance, and direct assistance to everyday Americans. It's my expectation that if the progress that has currently been made continues to move in the right direction with respect to those areas, the American people can feel confident that meaningful help is on the way.
Quick follow-up to that, is there any effort from the progressive wing of the caucus to increase the amount of those checks? Are they threatening to withhold their support unless that number goes up enough?
I have not heard that anyone is threatening to withhold support. I think appropriately so, Chairwoman Jayapal and members of the Progressive Caucus have pushed for direct survival assistance to everyday Americans. Where that number ultimately lands remains to be seen.
Mr. Jeffries, can you walk us through your expectation for timing for this? Of course, there's only a couple of days left, the Friday midnight deadline for the government funding. Do you anticipate the House or Senate might have to have another extension to make sure this can happen? Do you think both chambers will be able to vote on Friday?
At the moment, there's been no discussion of another continuing resolution, but Majority Leader Hoyer can best speak to this issue. He did indicate on the caucus call that he expects that we are going to remain in Washington until we get an agreement. We, of course, hope to be able to reach that agreement within the next day or so and to be able to vote, if not later on today, tomorrow, Friday, at some point over the weekend, whenever it takes in order to provide the relief that the American people need. Let me yield to Pete.
Will members or essential staff on the Hill receive COVID-19 vaccines, and is there anything that you can share about ongoing discussions that Hoyer mentioned last week?
Yeah, that's a question that is probably best directed to the chair of the Committee on House Administration, Representative Zoe Lofgren. She's done a tremendous job. The mayor of Capitol Hill, as she is colloquially referred to. I know that Speaker Pelosi and Chairwoman Lofgren have been guided by the expert opinion and advice that's been offered to us by public health professionals and the Capitol physician.
So do you guys have any indication, like has there been talk in your caucus about wanting to get a vaccine on the Hill? Or would you guys outsource that to your districts and plan to get it there?
There has been no conversation about on-the-Hill vaccinations. Our efforts have been focused on making sure that there are billions of dollars of assistance that we can provide to states and localities to ensure that the vaccines are administered in an effective, efficient, and equitable fashion, particularly focused on those communities that have been hit the hardest by COVID-19. We're all thankful for the progress that has been made with respect to the vaccines that are now being administered in parts of the country, including back at home in New York. And we want to, of course, make sure that the American people have all the information that they need to make an appropriate decision about receiving the vaccine, which many of us will encourage strongly, and that the infrastructure is in place so that we can turn a final corner on this deadly pandemic and get to a place with leadership from President-elect Joe Biden to build back better for the people. Pete, do you want to jump in?
All I would say is, just to echo what the chairman said, there has not been any discussion within our broader caucus about this. We have been completely focused on how you turn the vaccine into the vaccination locally. And that's the importance of the COVID relief package that we're discussing is, does it contain resources for our localities in New York, in California, and across this nation to deliver that vaccination? That's what we're focused on. Those are the conversations that we're having. It's a difficult time out there, and we know in order to turn the corner, we're going to have to deliver on that. So that's what our focus as a caucus is at this point.
Yeah, the only vaccination discussions that have taken place have been to try to make sure, one, that our first responders receive the vaccinations, our seniors who are incredibly vulnerable receive the vaccinations, people in nursing homes receive the vaccinations, and then, of course, communities that have been disproportionately and adversely hit hard, particularly low-income communities of color, immigrant communities, and large parts of Indian country have access to these vaccinations in an effective, efficient, and equitable fashion. Last two questions? Take
Mr.
this.
Jeffries, right now there's discussion of what exactly will happen with Iowa 2. The Republican candidate has been certified in that state. Of course, the Democratic candidate is contesting that with House administration. That decision will have to be made quite soon, as Democrats will be seating their members in early January. What do you expect will happen with that seat in particular?
Well, it's too early to speculate because right now we're just focused on getting through the current negotiations that are taking place in terms of the omnibus spending agreement and the COVID-19 relief package. Chairwoman Zoe Lofgren, as I understand it, as chair of the Committee on House Administration, along with the ranking member and all of the members of the House Administration Committee, will have a process that is in place to be able to address the jurisdictional issues that will be placed before the House of Representatives. That's a process that I'm unfamiliar with, and we'll see what takes place. I'm sure it's going to be comprehensive and judicious, respectful of both sides, and then let the facts dictate what the outcome will ultimately be. Last question.
Do you think the Democrats made a mistake not accepting a COVID deal before the election? The last offer from the White House was $1.9 trillion. So not only did you lose precious weeks, but you also lost $1 trillion now that you're looking at $900 billion. Looking back, was that a mistake?
I don't believe that it was a mistake because there was no real indication that they were serious underneath that $1.9 trillion to provide the type of relief that we believe was necessary in order to aggressively confront the COVID-19 pandemic. And there was no indication that Mitch McConnell was prepared to accept what the administration floated publicly as their offer. At the end of the day, the Trump administration can say one thing theoretically, but if they haven't convinced Mitch McConnell, who was still at $500 billion, to put the bill on the Senate floor and secure the Republican votes necessary to pass it, then it actually was a fictional offer that had no basis in reality, which is why I don't believe that mistakes were made on our side of the Capitol. Thank you, everyone.